The incident. The sleek diplomatic vessel Harmony glided through the inky void of space, its hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside, Ambassador Elena Reyes adjusted her uniform, her eyes fixed on the looming shape of the Zenth homeworld growing larger in the view screen. Final approach, Ambassador. Captain Marcus Chen announced from his position at the helm. We'll be docking with Zenth Prime Station in approximately 20 minutes. Elena nodded, her mind racing with the gravity of their mission. After centuries of isolation, humanity had finally made contact with an advanced alien civilization. The Zenth Empire, a sprawling interstellar nation of insectoid beings, had extended an invitation for diplomatic talks. It was a historic moment, one that could shape the future of both species for generations to come. How's Zara holding up? Elena asked, glancing towards the rear of the bridge where her 16-year-old daughter sat, eyes wide with a mix of excitement and nerves. I'm okay, Mom, Zara replied, offering a weak smile. Just a little overwhelmed. Elena understood her daughter's apprehension. Bringing Zara on this mission had been a calculated risk, but one she believed necessary. The Zenth placed great importance on family bonds, and having her daughter present was meant to demonstrate humanity's commitment to fostering a genuine connection between their species. As the Harmony docked with the massive orbital station, Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. The airlock hissed open, revealing a delegation of Zenth officials waiting to greet them. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed under the station's harsh lighting, compound eyes reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors. Welcome, honored representatives of Earth. The lead Zenth spoke, its mandibles clicking in what Elena hoped was a gesture of goodwill. I am High Counselor Vexlar. We are most pleased by your arrival. Elena stepped forward, bowing slightly in the manner they had been instructed was appropriate. Thank you, High Counselor. I am Ambassador Elena Reyes, and on behalf of Earth and all humanity, we come in peace and friendship. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of introductions, tours, and preliminary discussions. Elena found the Zenth to be fascinating, their society a complex hierarchy built on concepts that sometimes seemed utterly alien to human sensibilities. Yet there were moments of surprising commonality, flashes of humor or empathy that bridged the gap between their species. As the first day of talks drew to a close, Elena felt a growing sense of optimism. Progress had been made, groundwork laid for more substantive negotiations in the days to come. She watched with pride as Zara engaged in conversation with a young Zenth, the two of them comparing notes on their respective worlds with the easy camaraderie of youth. It was during a ceremonial dinner that everything changed. The grand hall of the station was filled with both human and Zenth dignitaries, the air buzzing with conversation and the clink of utensils against plates. Elena was deep in discussion with Vexlar when a commotion erupted at the far end of the room. Mom, Zara's panicked voice cut through the noise, sending a chill down Elena's spine. She turned to see her daughter backing away from a group of agitated Zenth, their mandibles clicking furiously. Before Elena could react, one of the aliens lashed out, a wickedly sharp appendage slicing through the air. Time seemed to slow as Elena watched in horror, her body moving on instinct even as she knew she was too far away to intervene. The Zenth strike connected, and Zara crumpled to the ground, a spreading pool of crimson staining her white uniform. Chaos erupted in the hall. Captain Chen and his security team rushed to Zora's side, weapons drawn as they formed a protective circle around the fallen girl. Elena pushed through the crowd, her heart pounding in her ears. Zara. Oh God, Zara, she cried, dropping to her knees beside her daughter's motionless form. Elena's hands shook as she pressed them against the wound, desperately trying to stem the flow of blood. Ambassador, we need to get her to medical bay now. Chen's voice cut through her panic. Without waiting for a response, he scooped Zara into his arms and began running towards the exit. Elena followed in a daze, barely registering the shouts and confusion around her. As they raced through the station's corridors, she caught glimpses of Zenth security forces mobilizing, their chitinous bodies forming living barriers between the humans and their own people. The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Zenth medical personnel worked alongside the Harmony's doctor, their advanced technology offering a glimmer of hope. But as the station's artificial day cycle gave way to night, that hope faded. "I'm sorry, Ambassador," the ship's doctor said softly, his eyes filled with grief. "We did everything we could, but the damage was too severe." Delina felt the world crumble around her. She stumbled to her daughter's bedside, taking Zora's cold hand in her own. How had it come to this? A mission of peace and cooperation ended in senseless violence and the loss of her only child. As dawn broke over Zenth Prime, news of the tragedy spread like wildfire. On Earth, reports of a human child killed by alien hostiles ignited a firestorm of outrage and fear. The fragile trust between humanity and the Zenth lay shattered, replaced by suspicion and calls for retribution. High Counselor Vexlar himself came to offer condolences, his usual imposing presence diminished by what seemed to be genuine remorse. "Ambassador Reyes, words cannot express the depth of our sorrow for this terrible accident. The individual responsible has been apprehended and will face the full force of our justice system." Elena barely heard him, her grief giving way to a cold, hard anger. "Accident," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "My daughter was murdered, Counselor. This was no accident." Vexlar's compound eyes flickered uncertainly. "I assure you, a full investigation will be conducted. We value the potential of our alliance with humanity and—" "Alliance?" Elena cut him off, her laugh bitter and harsh. "There will be no alliance, Counselor. Not now. Not ever. Humanity extended the hand of friendship, and you repaid us with the blood of our children." She turned away from the alien leader, her gaze falling on the shrouded form of her daughter. In that moment, Elena Reyes felt something fundamental shift within her. The idealistic diplomat who had arrived on this station, filled with hope for the future, was gone, replaced by a grieving mother with a heart full of vengeance. As the Harmony prepared for emergency departure, carrying its precious, tragic cargo back to Earth, Elena's mind raced with the implications of what had transpired. She knew that once word of Zara's death spread, the clamor for retaliation would be deafening. Humanity, only recently united in its quest to reach the stars, would now find itself galvanized by a shared anger and sense of betrayal. The Zenth, for all their advanced technology and vast empire, had made a grave miscalculation. They had awakened a sleeping giant, one that would not rest until justice, or vengeance, had been served. As the Harmony broke orbit, leaving behind the glittering expanse of Zenth Prime, Elena Reyes made a silent vow. Her daughter's death would not be in vain. If the Zenth wanted conflict, then conflict they would have. Humanity would show the galaxy that they were not to be trifled with, that the cost of harming one of their own was higher than any alien empire could bear. The stars streaked past the view screen as the ship entered FTL, carrying with it a message that would soon echo across every human world and colony. The Zenth had drawn first blood, and humanity would answer in kind. The age of peaceful exploration was over. The era of human dominance was about to begin. Earth's response. The news of Zara Reyes' death spread across Earth and its colonies like a shockwave. Within hours, the tragedy had become a rallying cry, uniting humanity in a way that no external threat had ever managed before. In the halls of the United Earth Government in Geneva, emergency sessions were called as leaders from every nation and off-world colony gathered to determine their response. The chamber buzzed with a mix of outrage and grim determination. President Adaman Kruma stood at the podium, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely contained fury. "My fellow citizens of Earth and her colonies," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the planet via global broadcast. "Today we face a crisis unprecedented in human history. The Zenth Empire, whom we approached in peace and friendship, has committed an act of unconscionable violence against us." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing images of Zara Reyes, smiling, full of life. juxtaposed against the clinical report of her death. The chamber fell silent, the weight of the loss palpable. This was not merely an attack on one family or one diplomatic mission, Nkrumah continued. This was an attack on all of humanity, on our values, our hopes for a peaceful future among the stars. The Zenth have made it clear that they do not share these values. They have shown us that in their eyes, human life is cheap. In orbit above Earth, fleet admirals and ship captains watched the broadcast from their vessels, hands clenched into fists as they awaited orders. Let it be known, Nkrumah's voice thundered, that humanity will not stand idly by in the face of such aggression. We extended the hand of friendship, and it was met with violence. Now, we shall respond in kind. The president paused, his eyes sweeping across the assembled leaders and the countless citizens watching from afar. I am hereby authorizing the full mobilization of Earth's combined military forces. Every shipyard, every factory, every research facility will be dedicated to one purpose: preparing our response to the Zenth threat. Across the solar system, the gears of industry began to turn. On Mars, massive forges roared to life, pumping out armor plating and hull sections for a new generation of warships. The shipyards orbiting Jupiter's moons worked around the clock, assembling vessels of unprecedented size and firepower. In top-secret facilities scattered throughout the asteroid belt, scientists and engineers labored over prototype weapons systems designed to penetrate even the most advanced alien defenses. The best minds humanity had to offer were united in their determination to create a force that could stand against the vast Zenth Empire. Admiral Jahan Chen, father of Captain Marcus Chen, who had been present at the diplomatic mission, stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, the first of Earth's new Vengeance-class dreadnoughts. At over 3 kilometers in length and bristling with enough firepower to level a small continent, it was a far cry from the peaceful exploration vessels that had once been humanity's pride. "Admiral," his XO reported, "we're receiving updates from Fleet Command. Production is ahead of schedule. We'll have 500,000 ships ready for deployment within the month." Chen nodded, a grim smile playing across his features. "Good. The Zenth think they've seen the extent of human capability. They have no idea what's coming for them." Back on Earth, in a secure bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Ambassador Elena Reyes sat in quiet contemplation. The walls around her were covered in star charts, intelligence reports, and profiles of key Zenth leaders. Her grief had crystallized into a laser-focused determination to see justice done. A soft chime announced the arrival of President Nkrumah. Elena stood, noting the lines of exhaustion etched on the leader's face. "Elena," Nkrumah said softly, "I wanted to check on you personally. How are you holding up?" She met his gaze steadily. "I'm focused on the task at hand, Mr. President. The Zenth will pay for what they've done, not just to Zora, but to all of us. They've shattered any hope for peace in our lifetime." Nkrumah nodded, his expression grave. "I fear you may be right. But Elena, we're venturing into unknown territory here. The scale of the conflict we're about to initiate, it could reshape the galaxy itself." "Good," Elena replied, her voice hard. "The galaxy needs reshaping if creatures like the Zenth are allowed to dominate it. Humanity will show them, and any other alien race watching, that we are not to be trifled with." As they spoke, reports continued to flood in from across human space. Colonies on distant worlds fortified their defenses, fearing Zenth retaliation. Civilian ships were retrofitted with weapons and armor, pressed into service to bolster the growing fleet. In universities and research labs, xenobiologists and cultural experts worked tirelessly to uncover any weakness in Zenth physiology or society that could be exploited. Every scrap of information gathered during the brief diplomatic contact was scrutinized, analyzed for any advantage it might provide. The Zenth, for their part, seemed oblivious to the storm gathering on their horizon. Their ambassadors continued to transmit messages of regret and offers of reparation, but these were met with stony silence from Earth. The lack of response seemed to confuse the alien empire, unused to dealing with a species that did not bow to their technological superiority or vast interstellar reach. As the days turned to weeks, humanity's war machine grew to staggering proportions. The 500,000 dreadnoughts were merely the tip of the spear. Countless smaller vessels, from agile fighters to specialized electronic warfare ships, formed the bulk of the fleet. Each was crewed by men and women who had volunteered in droves, driven by a mixture of patriotism, vengeance, and the simple human drive to protect their own. On the eve of the fleet's departure, President Nkrumah addressed the nation once more. "Citizens of Earth and her colonies," he began, his voice solemn. "Tomorrow, we embark on the greatest military campaign in human history. Our cause is just, our resolve unshakable. The Zenth Empire will learn that humanity is not a species to be underestimated or trifled with." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "But let us not forget, in our righteous anger, the principles that have guided us to the stars. We fight not for conquest or subjugation, but for justice and security. When this conflict is over, let it be said that humanity faced its greatest challenge and emerged not only victorious, but with our values intact." As Nkrumah's speech concluded, a hush fell over the planet. In homes, in bars, in public squares, humans gathered to contemplate the enormity of what was to come. Parents held their children close, lovers shared tender moments, and friends raised glasses in solemn toasts. Aboard the UES Retribution, Admiral Chen performed one final inspection of his flagship. Every system was operating at peak efficiency, every crew member at their station, and ready for what lay ahead. As he reached the bridge, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. "This is for you, Marcus," he whispered, thinking of his son who had witnessed the tragedy firsthand. "For Zora. For all of us." With a nod to his XO, Chen gave the order that would echo across the fleet. "All ships, prepare for FTL jump. Our destination, Zenth space. For Earth and all her children, we go to war." As one, humanity's armada engaged their faster-than-light drives. In a flash of energy that momentarily outshone the sun itself, 500,000 dreadnoughts and their escort ships vanished from the solar system, bound for a distant empire that had no idea of the reckoning heading their way. The Zenth had sound the wind. Now, they would reap the whirlwind. The assault begins. The vast emptiness of space near the Zenth Empire's outer colonies suddenly erupted with blinding flashes of light. In an instant, the void was filled with the imposing silhouettes of Earth's mighty armada. 500,000 dreadnoughts, each a titan of metal and energy, backed by countless smaller craft, dropped out of FTL in perfect formation. Aboard the UES Retribution, Admiral Jihan Chen stood resolute, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "All ships accounted for, Admiral," his XO replied. "No FTL casualties. We've achieved complete tactical surprise. Zenth defensive networks are only now beginning to react." Chen allowed himself a grim smile. The element of surprise had been crucial to their plan. The sheer scale of the human fleet had allowed them to arrive en masse, overwhelming the Zenth's early warning systems. "Commence Phase 1, Chen ordered. "All ships, execute predetermined attack patterns. Let's show these bastards what humanity is capable of." Across the fleet, captains relayed the orders. Squadrons of smaller, agile craft peeled away from the dreadnoughts, streaking towards Zenth outposts and orbital facilities. The element of surprise gave them a critical advantage in these opening moments. On the Zenth colony world of Vextal Prime, panic erupted as the sky filled with human warships. The insectoid aliens had grown complacent in their technological superiority, never imagining that the upstart human race could mount such an overwhelming assault. Zenth defensive platforms, caught off guard, managed to fire off only a few token shots before being obliterated by precision strikes from human vessels. On the planet's surface, Zenth civilians watched in horror as their orbital defenses, long thought impregnable, crumbled under the human onslaught. "Admiral," a comms officer called out, "we're intercepting widespread Zenth communications. They're calling for reinforcements from their core worlds." Chen nodded. "As expected. Maintain comm jamming protocols. Let's keep them in the dark as long as possible." As the battle for Vextal Prime raged, the bulk of the human fleet pressed onward, deeper into Zenth space. World after world fell under the shadow of Earth's vengeance. The Zenth, for all their vaunted military might, found themselves outmatched at every turn. Human weapons, devised through intense research and development in the wake of Zora's death, proved devastatingly effective against Zenth shields and armor. Exotic particle beams sliced through Zenth cruisers like paper, while swarms of eye-guided missiles overwhelmed point defense systems. Yet it wasn't just technological superiority that gave humanity the edge. The human fleet fought with a cohesion and determination that stunned their alien opponents. Every captain, every crew member, moved with singular purpose, their actions guided by a righteous fury that the Zenth could scarcely comprehend. As reports of the attack reached the Zenth homeworld, the Empire's leadership found itself paralyzed with indecision. They had dismissed humanity as a minor race, barely worth notice in the grand tapestry of galactic politics. Now, faced with the full might of human retribution, they scrambled to mount an effective defense. High Counselor Vexlar, who had once offered condolences to Ambassador Reyes, now found himself fighting for political survival. In the Grand Chamber of the Zenth Imperium, he faced a barrage of accusations and demands for action. How could we have underestimated them so gravely? One minister chittered, mandibles clacking in agitation. These humans were supposed to be primitives, barely able to reach their own moon. Vexlar's compound eyes flickered in distress. We may have miscalculated. The death of their young one, it seems to have united them in ways we didn't foresee." "Miscalculated?" another counselor screeched. "Half our outer colonies are already under human occupation. This is beyond miscalculation. This is catastrophe." As the Zenth leadership bickered, humanity's advance continued unabated. Admiral Chen, coordinating the assault from the Retribution, watched with grim satisfaction as another Zenth battle group was reduced to floating debris. "Admiral," his XO reported, "long-range sensors are detecting a massive energy buildup in the Zenth core systems. It appears they're activating some kind of superweapon." Chen's eyes narrowed. So they did have an ace up their sleeve. Inform all ships to be on high alert. Whatever they're planning, we'll be ready. Meanwhile, on a nondescript vessel at the fringes of the conflict, Ambassador Elena Rice watched the battle unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. She had been assigned to a special operations ship, tasked with gathering intelligence and seeking out any opportunity to bring a swift end to the war. As she studied the incoming reports, a strange transmission caught her attention. It was heavily encrypted, using a cipher that didn't match known Zenth protocols. With growing curiosity, Elena began the process of decoding the message. Hours passed as the battle raged on. Human forces pressed ever closer to the Zenth homeworld, but resistance was stiffening. The initial shock of the attack had worn off, and the Zenth were beginning to rally their considerable resources. In the space above a contested world, a squadron of Earth fighters found themselves ambushed by a previously undetected Zenth task force. The humans fought valiantly, their superior training and technology allowing them to inflict heavy losses on the enemy. But for the first time since the invasion began, a human unit was forced to retreat. News of the setback rippled through the fleet. Admiral Chen received the report with a frown. It was inevitable that they'd start to adapt, he mused. We need to press our advantage before they can fully regroup. But even as Chen contemplated his next move, events were unfolding that would change the course of the war. In her quarters, Elena Reyes finally cracked the mysterious transmission. As she read its contents, her eyes widened in shock. This changes everything," she whispered. The message was from a faction within the Zenth Empire, one that opposed the actions of their own government. They claimed to have vital information about the true circumstances of Zora's death and the real motivations behind the Zenth's apparent aggression. As Elena rushed to inform Admiral Chen of her discovery, the Zenth superweapon powered up, its energy readings spiking to unprecedented levels. The human fleet, poised on the brink of total victory, suddenly found itself facing an unknown threat that could turn the tide of the entire war. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the outcome of the conflict, but potentially the fate of both species and the future of the galaxy itself. Unexpected allies. The vast expanse of space between the human armada and the Zenth core worlds crackled with tension. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the Zenth superweapon powering up. Energy readings were off the charts, suggesting a destructive capability beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. "Sir," his XO reported, "Ambassador Reyes is requesting an urgent communication. She says it's critical to the war effort." Chen frowned. What could be more critical than the impending firing of a superweapon? Nevertheless, he nodded. "Put her through." Elena Reyes' face appeared on the main screen, her expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Admiral, I've intercepted a transmission you need to hear. There's a faction within the Zenth Empire reaching out to us. They claim to have information about Zora's death and the true nature of this conflict." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Ambassador, we're on the brink of victory. This could be a Zenth ploy to buy time." "I understand your skepticism, Admiral," Elena replied, her voice firm. "But I've analyzed the encryption. It doesn't match any known Zenth military protocols. I believe this is genuine." As if to underscore the urgency of the situation, alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir," a sensor officer called out, "the Zenth weapon is preparing to fire." Chen made a split-second decision. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Ambassador, relay that transmission to my personal terminal. We'll hear them out, but we can't let our guard down." The human fleet scattered, executing a series of complex maneuvers designed to present as difficult a target as possible. Moments later, a beam of blindingly bright energy lanced out from the Zenth weapon, cutting a swath through space. Several human ships, caught at the edge of the beam, simply ceased to exist. "Damage report," Chen barked. "We lost 37 ships, sir," his XO replied, voice grim. "But it could have been much worse. The weapon appears to have a significant cooldown period." Chen nodded, then turned his attention to the decoded transmission. As he read, his expression shifted from skepticism to shock. This changes everything," he muttered, unconsciously echoing Elena's earlier words. The message was from a group calling themselves the Zenth Reformists. They claimed that the death of Zora Reyes had been orchestrated by a radical faction within the Zenth government, one that feared the potential of human-Zenth cooperation. This faction, led by a shadowy figure known as Arch-Militant Kizoth, had been pushing for war with humanity for years. "All ships, hold position," Chen ordered. "Do not advance further into Zenth space." His officers looked at him in confusion, but years of trust and respect kept them from questioning the order. Chen opened a channel to Elena's ship. "Ambassador, we need to make contact with these reformists immediately. If what they're saying is true, this war may have been built on a lie." Hours passed in tense negotiation. The human fleet maintained its defensive posture, wary of another attack from the Zenth superweapon. Finally, a breakthrough was achieved. A small Zenth vessel, broadcasting signals of peace, was allowed to approach the Retribution. In a scene that would have been unthinkable just days earlier, a delegation of Zenth reformists was escorted onto the bridge of Earth's flagship. Their leader, a Zenth female named Vexera, stepped forward. "Admiral Chen, Ambassador Reyes," she began. Her mandibles clicking in what they had learned was a gesture of respect. "We thank you for hearing us out. What has transpired between our peoples is a tragedy born of fear and misunderstanding. Elena's eyes flashed with anger. Misunderstanding. Your people murdered my daughter. Vexera's compound eyes dimmed in what seemed to be genuine sorrow. And for that, we can never adequately apologize. But please, you must understand. The one who struck down your child was not acting on orders from our government, but from a rogue faction led by arch-militant Kisov. Over the next hour, Vexera laid out a tale of political intrigue and manipulation that left the humans reeling. Kisov and his followers had seen humanity's rapid technological advancement as a threat to Zenth dominance. They had engineered the diplomatic mission's failure, hoping to provoke a human response that would justify a preemptive strike. But we underestimated you, Vexera admitted. The scale and speed of your retaliation caught even Kisov off guard. Now he clings to power by a thread, using the superweapon as his last defense. Chen absorbed this information, his tactical mind already racing with the implications. This weapon, he said, can you help us neutralize it? Vexera's antennae twitched in affirmation. We can do more than that, Admiral. We can help you end this war and bring the true culprits to justice. As discussions continued, word of the reformists' arrival spread through the human fleet. Reactions were mixed. Many were skeptical, their anger at the Zenth still raw. Others saw a chance to end the bloodshed and find real justice for Zara and all the others who had died in this conflict. Elena Reyes found herself torn. Part of her still burned for vengeance, but another part recognized the opportunity to prevent further loss of life. On both sides, she thought of Zara, of her daughter's dreams for a peaceful future among the stars. Would continuing this war honor those dreams or betray them? As the hours ticked by, a plan began to take shape. The reformists would help the human fleet bypass Zenth defenses, allowing for a surgical strike against Kisov and his loyalists. In return, humanity would cease its advance and agree to renewed peace negotiations once the true perpetrators were brought to justice. But even as hope for a peaceful resolution grew, challenges remained. Not everyone in the human fleet was willing to trust the Zenth, reformed or otherwise. And on the Zenth homeworld, Kisov was not about to give up power without a fight. The stage was set for a final confrontation. The next few hours would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the future of human-Zenth relations and perhaps the fate of the galaxy itself. As preparations were made, Admiral Chen found himself reflecting on the twists and turns that had led to this moment. The universe, he mused, is far more complex than we ever imagined. With a nod to Vexera and a reassuring glance at Elena, Chen turned to his crew. Prepare for battle stations. We're going to end this war, but not in the way any of us expected. As the human fleet and their unlikely Zenth allies made ready for the final push, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what this strange alliance of former enemies would bring. Resolution and aftermath. The combined fleet of human warships and Zenth reformist vessels made their approach to the Zenth homeworld, Chitara Prime. Thanks to the codes provided by Vexera and her allies, they were able to slip past the outer defense grid undetected. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, his posture tense but determined. All ships maintain stealth protocols, he ordered. We get one shot at this. Let's make it count. Beside him, Ambassador Elena Reyes watched the alien world grow larger on the view screen. Her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread. After all the bloodshed, after the loss of her daughter, it all came down to this moment. Vexera's voice crackled over the comm. Admiral, we're receiving updates from our operatives on the surface. Kisov has barricaded himself in the Imperial Citadel. He's threatening to use the superweapon to destroy Chitara Prime itself if we don't stand down. Chen's eyes narrowed. He's desperate. Good. Desperate enemies make mistakes. As they entered low orbit, alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. Sir, a sensor officer called out, we're detecting a massive energy buildup from the surface. The superweapon is powering up. It's now or never, Chen growled. All ships, commence Operation Checkmate. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The first, led by the Retribution, would engage Zenth loyalist forces in orbit. The second would provide cover for a joint human reformist strike team to infiltrate the Imperial Citadel. The third, composed of their fastest and most agile ships, would attempt to take out the superweapon's power source. As space lit up with weapons fire, Alina found herself on a dropship heading for the surface, part of the strike team tasked with apprehending Kizoth. She checked her pulse rifle, a piece of equipment she never thought she'd have to use when she first embarked on that fateful diplomatic mission. "Ambassador," one of the human soldiers said, concern in his voice, "are you sure about this? You don't have to be part of the ground team." Alina's grip on her weapon tightened. "I need to see this through. For Zara." The dropship shuddered as it entered Chitara Prime's atmosphere, anti-aircraft fire exploding around them. Through the viewport, Alina could see the Imperial Citadel, a massive structure that seemed to defy gravity, its spires reaching into the clouds. With a bone-jarring thud, they landed in what appeared to be a public square. The strike team poured out, immediately engaging Kizoth's loyalist guards. Alina found herself in the thick of the action, her diplomatic skills replaced by an almost primal instinct for survival. Above them, the space battle raged. Human dreadnoughts exchanged fire with Zenth cruisers, while squadrons of fighters darted between larger ships. The reformist vessels, though fewer in number, proved invaluable, their intimate knowledge of Zenth tactics allowing them to predict and counter enemy movements. On the Retribution's bridge, Admiral Chen coordinated the assault, his calm demeanor a steadying influence on his crew. "Status on the superweapon," he demanded. "Still powering up, sir," his XO replied. "Our strike team is approaching the power source now, but they're encountering heavy resistance." Chen nodded grimly. "Divert additional forces to support them. We cannot allow that weapon to fire." Back on the surface, Alina and the strike team fought their way through the Citadel's winding corridors. The architecture was alien and disorienting, but Vexera, who led the team, navigated with certainty. "The throne room is just ahead," Vexera chittered. "Kizoth will be there." As they approached the massive doors to the throne room, a squad of Kizoth's elite guards ambushed them. In the ensuing firefight, Alina found herself separated from the main group, pinned down behind a twisted piece of alien sculpture. Just as it seemed her position would be overrun, a familiar voice rang out. "Alina, duck." She dropped to the ground as a barrage of weapons fire sailed over her head, cutting down the Zenth guards. Looking up, she saw Captain Marcus Chen, Admiral Chen's son, leading a group of human Marines. "Marcus," she exclaimed. "How did you?" He grinned, helping her to her feet. "Dad thought you could use some extra backup. Now let's finish this." Together, they rejoined the main strike force and breached the throne room. There, surrounded by banks of alien technology and holographic displays, stood arch-militant Kizoth. The Zenth leader's carapace was scared and pitted, a testament to a lifetime of conflict. "So," Kizoth's voice was a low, menacing hiss, "the humans and traitors arrive at last. You're too late. In moments, my weapon will fire, and this entire sector of space will be cleansed of your contamination." Alina stepped forward, her weapon trained on Kizoth. "It's over. Your own people have turned against you. Surrender and face justice for what you've done." Kizoth's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Justice? You humans are so naive. In the vastness of the galaxy, there is only power, and I will not relinquish mine." He lunged for a control panel, but Vexera was faster. With inhuman speed, she tackled Kizoth, the 2 Zenth rolling across the floor in a tangle of limbs and chitin. "Now," Vexera shouted, "disable the weapon." Marcus and his team sprang into action, their fingers flying over the alien controls as they attempted to shut down the superweapon. Alina kept her weapon trained on Kizoth, who continued to struggle against Vexera's grip. Suddenly, the room was bathed in red light. A booming voice echoed through the chamber. Warning. Weapon overload imminent. Catastrophic failure in 60 seconds. K'Zoth's eyes gleamed with mad triumph. If I am to fall, I'll take you all with me. Time seemed to slow as Alina processed their dire situation. They had come so far, lost so much. It couldn't end like this. In that moment of crisis, Alina made a decision. Lowering her weapon, she approached the control panel. Her time on the diplomatic mission, her countless hours studying Zenth language and culture, had given her insights that even Marcus and his team lacked. Her fingers danced over the controls, intuition guiding her as much as knowledge. With just seconds to spare, she input a final command sequence. The red light faded, replaced by a soft blue glow. Weapon system shutdown complete. The automated voice announced, "Fail-safes engage." A collective sigh of relief echoed through the throne room. K'Zoth slumped in defeat, the fight finally gone out of him. As Marcus secured the Zenth leader, Alina opened a channel to the retribution. Admiral Chen, this is Ambassador Reyes. The weapon is neutralized. K'Zoth is in custody. It's over. In the days that followed, the true scope of what had transpired became clear. K'Zoth and his faction were tried for their crimes, not just against humanity, but against their own people. The Zenth reformists, led by Vexera, began the long process of reshaping their society, dismantling the militaristic structures that had led them to this point. Humanity, for its part, found itself in an unexpected position. Their show of force had demonstrated to the galaxy that they were not to be trifled with, yet their willingness to listen to the reformists and seek a peaceful resolution had earned them respect. In a ceremony broadcast across both human and Zenth space, Admiral Chen and Vexera signed a historic peace treaty. Alina Reyes, standing nearby, felt a bittersweet sense of accomplishment. Zara's death had been avenged, not through blind destruction, but by paving the way for a new era of understanding between their species. As the ceremony concluded, Alina stepped up to the podium. Looking out at the assembled dignitaries, human and Zenth alike, she took a deep breath. Today marks not just the end of a conflict, but the beginning of a new chapter for both our peoples. We have seen the worst of each other, but also the best. In honor of all those we've lost, let us move forward not in fear or hatred, but in hope and unity. Her words echoed across the stars, a testament to the resilience of both species and a promise for a brighter future. As humans and Zenth alike applauded, the first tentative steps toward a true galactic community were taken. The story of Zara Reyes, the human child whose death had nearly torn the galaxy apart, would be remembered not as a catalyst for war, but as the foundation of a lasting peace. In the end, humanity had proven itself to be not just a force to be reckoned with, but a species capable of forgiveness, growth, and wisdom. As the applause faded and the real work of building this new future began, Alina looked up at the stars visible through the ceremony hall's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, she thought, Zara was smiling. The galaxy would never be the same, and that perhaps was the greatest victory of all.